And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Staples Network, the show that provides research and statistics all about the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Frank Vajner. Follow me on Twitter at Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Frank Vajner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vajner. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Also, like its Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Check out its website, the MichiganSportsTruthPodcast.com, and scour the Staples Network's website, primetimewiththestaplesnetwork.com, and subscribe to the Staples Network's YouTube channel. We're broadcasting on YouTube as well. Also, like the Staples Network on Facebook and follow it on Twitter at Staples Network, and on Instagram at The Staples Network. Plus, listen to our shows on The Staples Network on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Spotify, CastBox, Deezer, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Blog Talk Radio. And we're going to try to be on Twitch as well. The disclaimer reads, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any of the mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them because the truth is out there. Also, listen to us on Podbean on the Staples Network. Got a lot of topics to discuss, including the ones that just broke out today. Let's get right to them. Former Central Michigan Chippewa wide receiver Antonio Brown. We've discussed his allegations of sexual assault and stuff like that, and the fact that he got cut by the New England Patriots just 1 week after signing with them. And now he's wanted and warranted by the police for burglary and battery, which is a felony, an incident Tuesday in Florida. Now Antonio Brown's getting himself in deeper legal trouble, Frank. And I wonder what Urinating Tree thinks about this. But Frank, take a step back.
Taylor, I will just say, with regards to Antonio Brown, you can't fix stupid. The guy apparently just doesn't know how to get together and just gone further and further downhill and just keeps digging his own grave. And now he's going to be arrested likely for burglary and battery in Florida. I've actually got the report from ESPN.com out here. Share a few things. His trainer, Glenn Holt, was actually arrested on burglary and a battery charge Tuesday. He ended up posting a $20,000 bond and was released from Broward County Jail earlier tonight. And this is what the police said. Said Brown threw a rock at a moving truck driver before the battery happened outside his home. And, of course, he later forced his way to the driver's side of the main cabin and began to strike the driver after a disagreement over a payment escalated. He was then restrained by his associates. I mean, but like I said, the guy just keeps digging his own grave. And, truthfully, it's a shame that he's fallen from being one of the best players in the NFL to somebody who's likely going to end up having to go to jail and do some time.
Yeah, I know you can't fix stupid, but my God, Antonio Brown has been a maniac through here tonight when he committed that burglary crime and battery. Wow, he's become from a football star to a wanted criminal all of a sudden. Wow. Not to a football star to a rapist, but now he's a wanted burglar. That is so insane.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's basically just another NFL star that's gone down on the wrong path and done a lot of bad things. I mean, it's a shame that it's happened. I mean, in light of the whole documentary about Aaron Hernandez and all the stuff that he did, you have to want, and some people are going to blame CTE as a problem. I'm not ready to draw that conclusion yet, but still, you, as a player or even a former player, you got to make smart decisions.
Off the field, yes, and on the field too. But yeah, off the field is even more important than sports. Yeah, you gotta be a good man, a good person to be eligible to play, in the professional leagues, kind of like in college and in high school. Not only do you get good grades, but make good decisions in life. It's pretty simple, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Speaking of the NFL, we heard that Lions defensive tackle Damon Snacks Harrison is mulling toward retirement, according to the Score mobile app. He was unsure about 2020. He's been a veteran. He lastly played for the New York Giants before signing with the Lions like 2 or 3 seasons ago. Damon Snacks Harrison, he may not want to play in the NFL, probably in terms of his health, or probably just his age, probably just in terms of his health, I would say, Frank.
Yeah, that too. And again, he's in his 30s, so he's had a lot of miles put on his tires. So it sounds like that he could very well hang it up. And again, and it's just bad that that's just another something that the Lions are going to have to address in the offseason via free agency or the draft, that into the interior part of their D-line. I mean, I know they added Mike Daniels last offseason. That didn't work out too well. So we'll see what happens come free agency and draft time. And also, a couple other notes here. Kenny Golladay, wide receiver, is actually going to the Pro Bowl
to join Darius Slay.
Yeah, well, he's going as a replacement for Chris Godwin, and the Tampa Bay wide receiver who's injured. And there's a report from Mike Rothstein that the Lions are still mum on whether new defensive coordinator Corey Umlin will call plays. Wouldn't surprise me if he isn't, given the fact that Patricia wants to have his fingerprints all over everything. So we'll see what comes of that as the offseason goes on.
Yeah, Matt Patricia has made some mistakes on offense too, in terms of putting in the wrong players, such as and not using his best players out there. For example, on that last play on 4th down in Oakland, he put Logan Thomas out there as his best wide receiver when the Lions were trying for a pass play in the end zone on 4th and goal with about 8 or 3 seconds left, and Matthew Stafford threw an incomplete pass. Of course, he didn't even send Golladay or Marvin Jones Jr. or Danny Amendola. You and Ed Smith really exploded on our show like 2 or 3 months ago.
Oh, yes, I remember that quite well. Well, when he didn't have the right personnel out of the field, and pretty much it's kind of the same crap. It was kind of the same crap, different day. So, but again, that's pretty much all behind us now. It's water under the bridge. Now the next thing we have to look ahead to is the draft and whether or not the Lions end up taking the right player or they end up reaching for somebody. When that comes, then we'll discuss that.
Yeah. Not to mention the Lions still have offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell.
That is very true.
Yep. Let's dive into some Tigers and get our What's Your Grade segment going on again for the second week in a row. The Tigers have traded left-handed pitcher Matt Hall to the Boston Red Sox for catcher John Nunez. Frank, what's your grade on that?
That's another minor league depth deal. So I don't really think it's anything to get too overly excited about. I'm just gonna give it a C minus. Again, they're just trying to get some depth in there. Nothing real special about it. But again,
Right.
it's not like they're just giving stuff away for nothing. So I'll give that one a C minus.
Right. Not that big at all. Not disastrous, but not great. And then we got the Tigers signing relief pitcher Hector Santiago to a minor league deal. Santiago, not great numbers to say the least last year with the White Sox, but in consideration, the Tigers had to sign him to a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. I would grade that a C minus as well, Frank, wouldn't you?
I definitely would as well. Again, just trying to get some depth put in your minor leagues. Maybe he has to come up for some spot duty here and there. Again, nothing to be really impressed by, but at the same time, it's not like they handed him a really huge contract in the second part of their starting rotation. So it gets C minus from me.
Yep. So that's our What's Your Grade segment. For those of you out there that have grades for the Matt Hall and John Nunez trade and the Hector Santiago signing, please leave a comment with a grade. So the Pistons take good care of the lowly Sacramento Kings, 127-106. The Kings are one of the worst teams in the Western Conference and in the NBA as well. The Pistons also took care of the Hawks. They're now, I think, 17-28 or 17-27, but they're in ninth place. They stand alone in ninth place. Pistons have won 2 straight.
Actually, they've won 3 of their last 4. They lost to the Wizards on Monday.
Yes. Yeah, 106-100. Yeah, that was on Monday. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they will play the Grizzlies on Friday night.
Oh boy, the Grizzlies. Oh boy, that's a good one. That's a good team. Yep. Pistons. They're 17-28. Derek. Not to mention, before Derrick Rose, the Pistons have granted a $9.2 million disabled player exception for Blake Griffin's potential season-ending knee surgery. We already pointed this out, that Blake Griffin's likely done for the season with his knee injury. So there's that. And now the Derrick Rose stuff, Frank, from The Athletic, or Bleacher Report, actually. Bleacher Report. Frank, I'm sure you read this, but I'm going to go over this to our audience. The Lakers and 76ers have shown interest in trading for Derrick Rose. The Magic and Bulls are 2 other good teams listed in that Bleacher Report article with good trade packages. But first off, the Lakers, Bleacher Report pointed out that listed projected a trade for each of those teams. The Lakers are going to trade Kyle Kuzma and Quinn Cook for Derrick Rose, and maybe Seko Doumbia as well. The Philadelphia 76ers may trade Zahir Smith and Jonah Bolden and a second-round draft pick to the Pistons for Derrick Rose. The Magic might have a deal sending DJ Augustine and a first-round pick to the Pistons for Derrick Rose. And Cristiano and the Chicago Bulls, last but not least, in a race for that 8th spot. The Bulls are in 10th place right now, by the way, in the Eastern Conference standings. The Pistons are in 9th, like I mentioned before. But the Bulls are projected to give away Cristiano Felicio and a first-round pick to the Pistons for Derrick Rose. So, Frank, what do you make of all this? The Lakers seem to be the best team to win that Derrick Rose trade sweepstakes.
Well, I'm a little bit surprised that the Lakers would give up Kyle Kuzma in order as part of a deal to get him. I think that's look, if the Pistons end up taking that deal, then I think it would be good. And then you mentioned that Kuz and Doumbia could end up being forming a couple of nice forwards in the front court, which would be really nice too. So I think I think the Lakers would be the best deal. I mean, Philadelphia, I'm really not so sure, because I think Rose would end up having to be back up to Ben Simmons down there. Orlando, I mean, DJ Augustine actually did have a short stint in Detroit for a while, if you remember that. But Augustine really wasn't that impressive. The Bulls, sending him back there, I'm not so sure that's going to happen. So I think the Lakers deal will be the best case scenario, but we'll see what happens there. And then, of course, you mentioned Blake Griffin. The Pistons received the $9.2 million disabled player exception. So I think that's good. I mean, you hate that to see it happen and the circumstances, but at least the Pistons aren't going to, or at least they're going to get a little bit of a break on the salary cap. And notes on the disabled player exception from Bobby Barks says 50 have been granted since the year 2000. And 11 have been used, 9 trades, 2 signings. So just a couple of fun facts and figures on that. So we'll see what happens. Depends on that front if Griffin does. And I don't think he's going to end up getting moved, but we'll see what happens. Or maybe he does get somebody to take on his bad deal, and maybe you take on somebody else's bad deal in exchange. I know that we mentioned the Atlanta Hawks were a possible team they could target if they were willing to take on Chandler Parsons' bad contract. However, unfortunately, Parsons was in a serious auto accident and suffered serious injuries. So
that's why they were out.
His career will probably be over. So it looks like that deal would be off the table.
Yeah, and thus the Hawks are out of the Drummond trade talks. So that's what happened. Yeah, the auto accident. Yeah, that's also what you hate to see happen. So yeah, I guess better luck next time on their end. Thoughts and prayers to Josh Jackson. Hope he survives.
Chandler Parsons, you mean?
Chandler Parsons. My apologies. Oh man, that's more familiar of a name in the NBA as well. So yeah. So the Red Wings, 12-34-4 going into their game against the Minnesota Wild. Right now it's 4-2 Wild at XL Energy Center, third period. Philip Zadina's got both goals for the Red Wings. He almost made it a hat trick, according to Max Boltman, one of the co-hosts for the Wings for Breakfast podcast on the Athletic mobile app. And I've been listening to them. I've been listening to that show for the past 2 or 3 months. Max Boltman and Prashant Iyer have been doing a hell of a job.
I've been giving it a listen too, at least the last couple of weeks, and I know they just had an episode that was released today. Hey, I'll have to give that a listen tomorrow when I'm at work. There, get some good talk on the Red Wings as well, and a couple of notes there. Earlier tonight on the NBCSN broadcast of the Red Wings and Wild, Pierre McGuire had mentioned that Trevor Daley has reportedly talked to Steve Yzerman about a trade to a contending team. Daley currently has 1 more year left. Currently is in the final year of his deal that he signed back in 2017. So he's looking to get moved somewhere. Who knows what the Wings will get in return? Maybe they end up, I'd say probably not going to get much more than a draft pick, since Daley would basically be just a depth defenseman and you're just a rental at that. So hopefully Steve Yzerman can get a mid-round pick in return, earn for him. And also on TSN's hockey trade bait list, forward Andreas Athanasiou, currently at number 9 on that list. He is in the final year of his deal. He is a pending free agent with a $3 million cap hit. So we'll see what happens as the NHL trade deadline will come up near the end of February.
Yeah. Can't wait for that. It's like over a month away. We'll see what happens. I would like to see Trevor Daley play for a contending team in the NHL. Yeah, I'm pretty sure at least a couple others besides Daley are getting tired of playing for a rock bottom team in the Red Wings. I know Yzerman is still in his first year as general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, but there are some that, including I think Darren Helm, I'm guessing, that's willing to be traded. I'm just throwing it out there. He's in the last year of his 4-year, $19.2 million to $19.25 million contract. He's probably not going to get extended here at all. Here, he still hasn't produced much. But Madison Bowey is still worth keeping. Actually, Madison Bowey has been playing great defensively as of late. He just does what he's been doing what he needs to, he's been needed to do on his own end of the rink.
Yeah. Well, Taylor, a quick note. I just pulled up Cap Friendly. I looked at the Red Wings cap situation. Darren Helm's deal expires in 2021, so after this season, he'll have another year left at $3.85 million. So hopefully I'm not real sure if he ends up sticking around or not, given the fact that he's not real productive, and if Yzerman can't look to move him, I mean, maybe you could, I don't know if you consider buying him out, cutting him loose.
That's another option.
Yeah. And then I was even listening a little bit to the radio broadcast as I was driving home, and I guess the Vegas Golden Knights are reportedly looking for a defenseman too. So maybe a name like Mike Green, when he gets healthy, is a possibility to get moved there. Daley could be a possibility as well if they're looking to add some depth. So I'd say either one of those two are probably candidates to be moved out.
Yep, that's also true. So the Red Wings have 28 points. Yeah, and that trade deadline is also coming up at the end of February as well. So both the NHL and NBA trade deadline are just around the corner, with just over a little bit of a month away. Pistons are still looking to trade Andre Drummond and now Derrick Rose. Wow. Yeah, Derrick Rose gets in the fray now. And then we talked about the Red Wings. Andreas Athanasiou in trade talks. Trevor Daley, like you pointed out, requesting a trade. You pointed this out just a few minutes before we went on the air with this episode. A few minutes off the air, you hear it from Pierre McGuire on NBCSN during the Red Wings Wild NBCSN broadcast with Kenny Albert and Eddie Olczyk in the booth. I know Mike Doc Emmerich can't announce every game on Wednesday because he has other stuff to do, but that's not important. We just follow. We follow mostly just our teams for our Michigan Sports Truth podcast, and Trevor Daley right out of the gate requested a trade. And who do you think the Red Wings could get in return for Trevor Daley?
Well, as I said, I think it's probably going to be a mid-round draft pick in return, because again, he's 36 years old, got $3.16 million cap hit at final year of his deal. So we'll see what happens. I know he isn't listed on the trade bait board. I mean, the defensemen that are listed, Alec Martinez, from the Kings, Shane Gostisbehere from the Flyers, Sammy Vatanen from the Devils, Brendan Dillon from the Sharks, Ron Hainsey from the Senators, Marco Scandella from the Canadiens, and Jeff Petrie from the Canadiens. So I would say if somebody's looking for a defenseman but not willing to pay a lot to get one of the aforementioned, I think possibly Daly ends up going to a contending team. I'll say possibly Vegas, for example, maybe even the team in the East that's looking to contend, maybe like Washington, maybe a return to Pittsburgh as well, or maybe even a team that's looking to make a playoff push like Columbus or Carolina. A few other West teams to watch, possibly St. Louis or Colorado, even Vancouver as well. I wouldn't be surprised. And, of course, Edmonton's always still in second place in the Pacific Division, and actually in a logjam right now, so they might be looking for help. It's something which I just say stay tuned on. I think Mike Green might cost a little bit more given the fact that he can provide a lot more offense from his position. And so I'd say maybe you get possibly I'd say best case you probably get a second-round pick in return earned for him. Again, I'm just kind of speculating. And other free agents tends to be I don't think they're going to get anything for Jonathan Ericsson because he's already been waived. Andreas Athanasiou probably you end up getting your biggest haul for in return. Excuse me. And if you look to move anyone else maybe you move one of your goalies is from a team that's looking for goaltending help. So we'll see what Yzerman does. I would imagine that he's definitely going to look to sell off a lot of pieces and get some assets in return.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. We'll see what Yzerman can do. So transitioning to college basketball, the Michigan State Spartans took care of the Wisconsin Badgers 67-55. They've climbed back up to 11th in the AP poll, while Michigan has now dropped out of the dropped out of the top 25 after losing to Minnesota and Iowa, and now they lose at home to Penn State 72-63 at Chrysler Center. The Wolverines are dropping like a fly with Juwan Howard.
They're 2-5 in the Big Ten right now. And again, I think it's another sign that Michigan's a team that peaked in November. Everyone was kind of raving about them when they won the battle for Atlantis. And now they're now they've just petered out and they've never really recovered from it. Here's some of the numbers from tonight's game. And Xavier Simpson plays all 40 minutes. 18 points on 8 of 23 shooting.
18 points?
Yes, 18 points on 8
Not
of
bad.
23 shooting.
Oh, boy. 8 of 23.
That's not real good. He had 6 assists, but he also had 6 turnovers as well.
Why did Juwan Howard play Xavier Simpson the entire 40 minutes? Give him some rest for goodness sake.
Probably because he doesn't really have any other viable options at point guard, would be my guess.
Well, he's got to play some different position player to play point guard in a different role. You know, got to find desperate times. Got to find desperate measures in desperate times. You know, if you got to rest Xavier Simpson, and Juwan Howard didn't rest Xavier Simpson at all.
Exactly, and I think also Michigan's clearly missing Isaiah Livers, who's still out indefinitely with a groin injury. But a few other numbers for you. John Teskey, 9 points on 4 of 10 shooting. And Brandon Johns, 14
How many minutes did Teskey play? How many minutes did
31 minutes.
Oh, 31 minutes, just 9 points for Teskey? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and
Oh.
Austin Davis also played.
At least
9
he got
minutes.
rest.
Austin Davis also played 9 minutes, only scored 2 points. Michigan only got 4 points from bench players. Davis and David DeJulius were the only bench players to play, and they combined for 4 points.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That is so terrible. Oh my God. Oh man. Not only is Juwan Howard in his first year as head coach of Michigan, but the Wolverines roster had already depleted due to players graduating from last year before John Beilein left to take the head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers position in the NBA.
Well, here's some more numbers. Franz Wagner, he had himself a terrible night. 6 points, 1 of 9 from the field, 1 for
He
8
sucks.
from downtown. Yeah, he's nothing like his big brother. Eli Brooks, 12 points on 4-12 shooting. Michigan as a team, they shoot 24 out of 68 from the field, 5 for 28 from the long line. They got the free throw line 14 times, made 10 of their free throws. And I do know that Juwan Howard was not happy with officiating in the loss to Iowa.
He needs to get over
Iowa got more free throw attempts. Well, you shot. Free throws were pretty even in this one. Both teams made 10, but Michigan gets out-rebounded 32-26 on the defensive glass.
Close.
Yeah, so I mean they're clearly not the same team defensively they were under Beilein. That tells me the defensive rebound deficiencies tell me they're not checking out on defense, and so just all in all, it was a bad shooting night. A lot of missed assignments, especially they couldn't slow down Lamar Stevens from Penn State, who had 19, and this Curtis Jones, who had 18 points off the bench for the Nittany Lions.
Right.
So we'll see. So I believe the next game for Michigan, I got their schedule up. They will be home against Illinois on Saturday at high noon on Fox Sports 1. So we'll see if they're able to bounce back in that one. Well, I know they lost in Champaign earlier this year, so we'll see how well they respond, and then they close out the month of January with a road trip to Lincoln to play Nebraska.
Yep. Red Wings are on a power play with 1:13 left in the third period. They're still down 4-2. It's still a 2-goal game. They're probably going to lose unless they score early on this power play here. Michigan State still staying on their toes after that, what I mentioned before, their 67-55 victory. You want to go over them a little bit before we get to the EMU story, Title IX?
Absolutely. We do have to make mention that Cassius Winston ended up setting the Michigan State record for most assists in a career. He surpassed Team Cleaves. So, I mean, all in all, it was a good performance for Michigan State. They were up pretty big. Wisconsin kind of stormed back, cut it to 12 late. But you know, they ended up getting the win in this one. So up next for the Spartans, I believe, is going to be a trip to Indiana on tomorrow night, 8:30 on Fox Sports 1. That's a road game. And bit of a fun fact for you, Taylor.
Sure.
Big Ten this season, road wins have been tough to come by in conference play for opposing teams, but Michigan,
Right.
I think Michigan State, they've gotten Big Ten road wins over Northwestern, and actually that's their only Big Ten road win. They laid an egg to Purdue, so now they've got to go back to back Indiana and Minnesota on the road. Oh, we'll see what happens there.
Oh,
If you
Indiana.
ask me how I think it's going to go, I'll say they probably end up splitting.
Yeah.
So, and then they close out the month of January with a visit from Northwestern on the 29th. That will be a week from tonight.
That's in East Lansing.
Yes.
Minnesota Wild win 4-2. The Red Wings dropped to 12-35-4 with 28 points. That's good for their tank. Thanks. I was able to catch the rest of that on NBCSN after a little recording of something else. Well, everyone knows what I've been recording. That I don't even have to mention that. But anyway. Yeah, Cassius Winston racking up the assists, setting a record. Used to rack up points until that game at Purdue. Hopefully, he can get back into his super scoring ways. But hey, he's becoming more of a facilitator now. Is Cassius Winston? So yeah, not only is he playing for his brother Zach, but he's being more of a team player for the rest of the Spartan basketball program.
Yes, he is.
Also want to point out, former Texas Tech quarterback Jet Duffy has made his transfer to my school, the Central Michigan Chippewas at Central Michigan University. Before that, he was rejected by Tulane before, according to ESPN, reports from ESPN. So, Jet Duffy, welcome to Chippewa country in Mount Pleasant at Kelly Short Stadium. The Chippewas get a big quarterback, get a big one at quarterback to join Tommy Lazzaro and stuff. I want to see what Jet Duffy can do for my Chippewas. So there's that. Now it is 37 and change past the hour here on the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on the Staples Network. Let me go ahead and pull up that EMU story. We have some athletes that were awarded $125K as the Eastern Michigan Eagles, as Eastern Michigan settles their sports elimination lawsuit in Title IX. Yeah, I just the headline was there, but now I can't even find it. Let me dig it up right now. You're listening to the Michigan Sports Truth podcast. There we go. Eastern Michigan Eagles accepted 142 early retirement buyouts in an effort to bolster its finances, according to Martin Slagter. Eastern Michigan University does not have to bring back its softball program, but will pay two former student athletes, according to the settlement of a lawsuit filed by the athletes after their sports programs were eliminated. As a result of the settlement, EMU will pay former women's tennis team member Marie Mayarova and softball team member Ariana Shritian a combined $125,000, along with both of the athletes' legal fees since the lawsuit was filed in June 2018. The settlement was filed Tuesday, January 21st in U.S. District Court and approved by Judge George Karam Stee, who outlined the terms. Shritian, whose team is not returning to EMU, will get $100,000 in monetary relief per the agreement, while Mayarova, whose team has been reinstated, will get $25,000. Under the agreement, claims against EMU, its Board of Regents, Athletic Director Scott Weatherby, and President Jane Smith were dismissed. The settlement said, the agreement said, quote, Seth wrote in the settlement agreement, quote, Both sides agree that it would be preferable to devote EMU's resources to improving the athletic department rather than to expend those resources on litigation. EMU is committed to Title IX compliance, and the consent decree will assist in it in accomplishing that goal, unquote. The lawsuit claimed EMU was not providing effective accommodation to female student athletes. EMU eliminated the two women's sports in March 2018, along with the men's wrestling and swimming and diving programs, in an effort to reduce its athletics budget by $2.4 million. Overall, the cuts impacted 58 male and 25 female student athletes participating in the four canceled sports. STE had previously ruled that EMU reinstate both women's tennis and softball programs by the fall of 2019, although EMU was later granted an emergency stay halting the return of softball. While the women's tennis team began competing last fall, EMU instead argued it should create a new women's lacrosse program rather than work to reinstate softball. Under the settlement, EMU will create a women's lacrosse team that will begin competition by spring 2022. EMU will hire a head coach no later than spring 2020 and assistant coaches by fall 2021. Other terms of the settlement agreement include, number one, EMU agreeing to take steps to achieve sustainable proportionality between the ratio of male to female athletic participation opportunities to the ratio of male to female full-time undergraduate students attending the university by the end of the 2022-2023 academic year. Bullet point number two, EMU agreeing it will not eliminate any women's varsity sports during the settlement period unless the elimination is the result of circumstances beyond its control, or the elimination will not cause participation of women to fall below the level of substantial proportionality. The settlement neither requires nor prohibits the elimination of any men's varsity team. Bullet point number three, EMU agreeing to take steps to manage the roster sizes of men's and women's sports as are necessary to achieve substantial proportionality. And of course, and finally, bullet point number four, the university will commit at least $2 or at least $2 million more in total investment to women's sports on campus over the course of the next 3 years, in addition to funding the lacrosse program. This amount includes capital projects as well as operations. That's bullet point number four. Those are the bullet points. Continuing on, the university's legal team worked with the student athletes legal counsel for 15 months to arrive at a fair result, noting that the university presented and began to implement a solution that more comprehensively addresses its Title IX responsibilities. Title IX, I just mentioned that earlier, by adding more female student athletes to its rosters through the addition and expansion of other women's sports, according to EMU spokesman Jeff Larkham. He said, quote, "The university fully embraces Title IX and the support of our female student athletes at all levels, and we have worked diligently with plaintiffs to draft and present a consent decree that reflects these values. This settlement reflects the university's continued laser focus on compliance with Title IX. As the university has stated repeatedly throughout the case, its overarching priority in the situation is to meet its Title IX obligations completely and in a way that most benefits student athletes. Eastern will continue to be guided by this principle as it implements its Title IX plan," unquote. Jill Zwagerman, attorney for the student athletes, said her clients were pleased EMU, quote unquote, wanted to step up to, quote, wanted to step up and do the right thing, unquote, despite not agreeing to reinstate its softball program. She said, quote, Additionally, they are agreeing to add $2 million to budgets of the female sports to help support the female athletes and programs that they currently have. There is still much that needs to be done to help EMU obtain compliance with with Title IX, but their agreement to be monitored and report back to the court for the next few years is a step in the right direction, unquote. So that's the end of that article. So, Frank, the right decisions were made.
Yeah, it is. It does appear that the right decisions were made. I mean, it's a shame that it had to go through this as well. But again, I know that there was kind of a big uproar about how Eastern Michigan eliminating wrestling as a sport too, because I obviously do some work at Dundee High School where wrestling is a major sport, and a lot of people were kind of up in arms about that. But I mean, it seems like when you have to cut athletic programs at the collegiate level, you really have to navigate the waters carefully, because otherwise you're going to end up opening other cans of worms, like in this case with eliminating softball. And I know they're hoping to get that back eventually. I hope it does too, because I mean, even though it's not a huge high dollar sport or at a small university, because I know Eastern's probably their bigger revenue sports are men's basketball, football, and probably women's basketball if I had to take a guess. But hopefully they can get things going in the right direction and get everything going where it should be. And hopefully everything does go nice and smooth.
Yeah, and hopefully nothing like this ever happens again, because EMU needs all their programs, especially on the women's side of things. Title IX must be protected and taken very seriously with every NCAA school and athletic programs. So since we have about 10 minutes left, or at least 10 minutes left, why don't we wing it with 5 questions here? Question number 1, how many years will Antonio Brown serve in prison when he gets arrested?
I think that's honestly going to depend on once he's arrested and how his trial goes, and if the prosecutor decides to get him to plea bargain to a lesser offense. So if he ends up just doing maybe pleading guilty to a misdemeanor charge, so we'll just have to see how the legal process plays out first. I mean, I think for burglary and battery, this is just me speculating. I would have to imagine they probably get him to plead guilty to a lesser offense, and he probably just does some time in a county jail and ends up being released. So, but again, we'll see what happens. We'll let the process play out and go from there.
All right. Question number 2. Will Lions defensive tackle Damon Snacks Harrison retire before the 2020 season gets underway the upcoming fall?
I would have to say probably yes, especially yes, but I kind of want to see what happens in free agency and the draft first. If they end up making moves to possibly replace him, then I think you'll have a lot more clear picture on that. But I would say right now leaning towards yes.
All right. Question number 3. As I asked before, who or what will the Red Wings get in exchange for Trevor Daley if they manage to trade him?
I think they'd probably get a mid-round draft pick in return. Hearn at best, maybe a mid-level prospect. But I think definitely Steve is going to get some form of an asset in return, or if they trade Daley, and also if they trade Mike Green or anyone else. So we'll see what Steve does before the deadline.
Yep. Question number 4. Will Michigan finish their season by going to the NIT?
I would say that that's the one I'm gonna have to pull. I'm gonna have to pull up the latest bracketology from ESPN, see where they're at. But I would have to imagine that they are definitely falling right now. Per Joe Lunardi, they would be the 6th seed in the South region. So I'd say they're still holding steady, but I think if they end up dropping more games, let's say they end up lose to Illinois again, or if they end up dropping a game to another low level team or too many more, then yeah, I think Michigan fans should probably hit the panic button. I would say panic time, no. Concern, maybe.
Oh, well, concerns, yes, for me,
Yes, I would
because
say. Yeah,
Michigan
I would
lost
say
3 straight.
they should be a little bit concerned, but I don't think it's time. I don't think it's time to panic just yet. I mean, if I would have thought it as one of the last 4 buys or one of the last 4 in, then yeah. Because right now, Lunardi has 11 teams from the Big Ten making the tournament. So we'll see what happens there. But the Big Ten actually is pretty tough this year.
It is, but Michigan, it's Miss Wolverines that better get their act together.
Yes,
they have to. Otherwise, they're not going to make the big dance. That's the main concern of it all. And finally, question number 5. After all those signings that the Tigers have made, how many wins do you project them to collect in 2020?
I'm projecting them to collect somewhere between 55 and 65 wins at this point. I mean, I think they also had an opportunity to sign Marcell Ozuna, get into their outfield. Definitely would have made their outfield better and added some pop to their lineup. They didn't. The Braves got him. So I think possibly they go up to probably anywhere from 55 to 65 wins if everyone can stay healthy.
Yeah, that's still true. Even the C.J. Cron, Jonathan Scope may be good, but Ivan Noah, not very decent numbers to say the least. Last season with the White Sox, Hector Santiago, or should I say the Yankees or whatever, or the Blue Jays. Hector Santiago, not decent numbers either with the White Sox, average at best. Last year with the White Sox, he was signed to a minor league contract. We graded him a C-, along with the Matt Hall and John Nunez trade with the Boston Red Sox. By the way, Max Boltman on Twitter at @M_Boltman just tweeted Philip Zadina played 20 minutes and 51 seconds tonight in that 4-2 loss to the Minnesota Wild at XL Energy Center. But yeah, both grades, the Tigers, C-. So we got like 5 and change minutes. Frank, I'll let you kill some time with your closing statement. So go ahead.
Well, my closing statement will be this. The Red Wings still keep losing going into the All-Star break. Tyler Bertuzzi goes to the All-Star game. So I'd say watch it, see how he does there. I'm not sure what he's going to be competing in from a skills challenge standpoint, but we'll see what happens. The Pistons are just sitting in 9th place. We'll see if they trade Derrick Rose. The Tigers just keep trying to sign minor league depth. The Lions are, the Lions. And also, one little mention I do want to give, I'd like to offer a tip of my cap to Hudson High School football coach Chris Luma, who announced that he is retiring from coaching. He's been the head coach at Hudson High School since '97, been in some form of coaching for 38 years. One of the best coaches I've ever met. Very well respected in Lenawee County, around my area. So, Coach Luma, happy retirement. Wish you the best.
Yep. My closing statement, I'm going to try to take as much time as I can before I read the closing credits here. The Lions, they may have seen the last of Damon Snacks Harrison. They might have to fill in his shoes for a little bit as of right now, which is one of their focuses. But the main focus is ownership with the Lions. Again, Martha Ford has to sell the Lions to Jeff Bezos. Frank, you pointed out that Jeff is actually not as bad of an owner as Urinating Tree thought last week or the week before. Anyhow, but yeah, Martha Ford's got to sell the team somehow to somebody. Jeff Bezos is still better than Dan Gilbert. So I'll take Bezos over Gilbert if I had to choose one of the two. The Tigers, they're still trying to rebuild while signing two at least decent veterans in Jonathan Scope and C.J. Crone. Crone with the Minnesota Twins, Jonathan Scope from the Baltimore Orioles, who had given up a new record in the most home runs allowed in MLB history last year, and which is very depressing and aggravating at the same time if you're a Baltimore Orioles fan. The Red Wings, glad to see it all finally come to fruition. The rebuild and the veterans. Trevor Daley requested to be traded. Thank you, Pierre Maguire. Again, Darren Helm still has 1 year left on his contract, though, but who knows what will happen with him sooner or later. But Jonathan Erickson's definitely gone. Oh, by the way, back to the Lions here and the Tigers. We mentioned before, Marion Ilitch and Martha Ford are both aging, and they might soon pass away. And then Chris Ilitch and Bill Ford Jr. both most likely will then, after then, sell the Tigers and the Lions to Jeff Bezos for the Lions and whoever for the Tigers. And the Pistons, they're just staying mediocre. It's unlikely that they're in the number 9 spot trying to contend for a playoff spot, but still they're too good to tank, but they're probably not going to be good enough to reach the playoffs this time. I'll have to dig up the standings, but the Wolverines men's basketball team, they better get their act together. The Spartans, glad they're back on their toes. So thanks to Frank Vasner, who will be gone the first 2 weeks of the month of March. Hopefully Ed Smith returns by then. Until that being said, for Frank, I'm Taylor. Follow the show. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth podcast on Twitter at Michigan_Truth, also on Periscope and on Instagram at Michigan_Truth. And on the Stables Network on Twitter at Stables Network, and on Instagram at the Stables Network. Primetime with the StablesNetwork.com, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.com. Also like both their pages on Facebook. Thanks very much for listening and downloading and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. And with a hind, we rest our case.